Maddie, we've gotten a lot of people to start listening and watching the show on YouTube and stuff like that over the season. We've grown a lot this year for our first year. It's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great.
Yeah. And now I'm gonna actively make everybody mad who just became fans of us and the subscribers and everything else. So buckle up. So
Let's go.
fun fact that's gonna make everyone mad. Um, FAU, Florida Atlantic, has more Final Fours than the following teams: Bama, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Vandy, Ole Miss, Mizzou, and then FAU also has the same amount of Final Fours as Auburn, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Georgia. And hello, people who used to listen to us, and goodbye, everybody who's brand new. This is the Hoop Southbound Show. And yeah, that's how we started the show today. Making everybody mad. FAU, first appearance in the Final Four. Maddie, it is the year of the mid-major, would you say?
It is absolutely wild. I had several people asking me at work today coming back from the weekend. So what do you think? Like, what's on your mind? I said, honestly, I just gave up like after about the Sweet 16 because it was all insanity.
Yeah, it's been an insane year. I had a friend here at law school today because today's first day back at school from spring break, and we were talking to each other, and I was like, yeah. He's like, did you do a bracket this year? And I'm like, yeah, I always do a bracket. And he goes, yeah, how's yours doing? I was like, mine's destroyed. And he's like, I'm actually winning my bracket group, but here's the thing: I'm winning with like a score that would normally be completely embarrassing in any other given year. Like if he's got like a super low score and he's winning his whole bracket group right now. And that's how I was talking about earlier with my dogs, like being very competitive in the bracket group coming out of the first weekend in the last episode. It's absolutely insane. Who would have thought we had a Final Four with Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, UConn, and Miami? Like this is absurd. It's just nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only one I really semi thought would be there was UConn, and everything else I feel is just kind of a like I said in other podcasts, the dark horses that made it through.
Yeah, it's really, really weird. Like look at the teams that they beat in the way here. FAU to get here had to beat Tennessee, a good basketball team out of Tennessee in the Sweet 16. San Diego State had to beat Alabama in the Sweet 16. UConn beat Arkansas in the Sweet 16, and then Miami beat Texas, who will be a team we talk about in the future on this show and soon to be future SEC team. No one seed in the Final Four. I don't know when the last time that happened. There was no one seed in the Elite Eight, which this is the first time that's happened ever.
Yeah.
Bizarre year. But you look at the teams, like I said, like this is the year of the mid-major. There's no SEC, there's no Big 12, there's no Big 10, there's no Pac-12, there's no American conference. 5 out of the 7 power conferences don't have a team in this year. Like it's crazy to even think about. Normally, four, like 3 out of 4, 3 out of 4, or 4 out of 4 will be in there. But yeah, 5 of the 7 conferences have no representation in this. And look at the conferences that they are: the Big East, which is a good basketball conference, and the ACC, which finished as one of the worst power conferences out there according to KenPom this season. What is going on?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, David, I love it. I feel like it gives schools, smaller schools hope. Like
Yeah.
You know, it's you see, I feel like the same schools competing when you get past the Elite Eight point for the most part. I mean, sometimes you have some outliers in there, but I feel like it gives everybody hope. Like if you're a good ball team and you can put it together and get your X's and O's right and have a decent talent level, you can get there too.
Yeah, 100%. And look at what this year's done. Like we've got the COVID year with the fifth year guys playing the additional season. So you got a lot more college basketball experience out there. And then you look at who you've also got the transfer portal. We got guys who didn't get playing time at bigger schools coming down to play for these, mid-major programs in San Diego State and FAU. And it's absolutely crazy. Like let's stay on FAU though for a second. And I promise everybody we do have SEC basketball talk to get to today. We'll go through that in a little bit. But let's talk about FAU first with this. This is their first Final Four. Hence the joke I made at the beginning of the show, talking about them being tied up with all the SEC teams that only have one, and the SEC teams who have never made it to a Final Four. But this is their first one. They've had a heck of a run. And I just want to tell everybody in the country right now, if you're looking for a coach, Dusty May might be a guy to hire. I'm just saying, look.
David, it kind of sounds familiar. I think you may have mentioned that.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it back in the regular season who Ole Miss should hire as their head coach. Instead, they got, Chris Beard, who's didn't have the best reputation coming into the season, so to speak. But yeah, no, Dusty May, young coach, a lot of talent. Like I'm telling you, I don't think he's coming to the SEC because everybody's pretty stable with their coaches right now. Ole Miss definitely pulled the trigger before they actually got a real look at this guy. Yeah, congratulations. Dusty May is going to go pull a heck of a job somewhere, and I mean it's going to be at a good school. It'll be on a tier class with I guarantee he'll find a job with someone on a tier class of Syracuse, Villanova, Georgetown, Arkansas, those teams that have one or two national championships, multiple Final Four appearances, but outside the major blue blood class. That's where he'll probably find a job for a program like that. One go and look, and I think that's going to happen very soon. Dusty May deserves to get a good job at this point. So it's been very impressive. A heck of a season by FAU. They beat Florida. They beat multiple SEC teams this year. They beat Florida. They beat Tennessee. Good basketball team. Made it all the way here to the Final Four. We've been talking about them a little bit with the bracketologists throughout the course of having them on the show through January through March. So, it's not a major surprise. We heard Dusty May on the Jim Rome show earlier this season. Rome was basically saying the same thing we were. Someone needs to hire this guy. But, it is what it is. He's out there. Somebody's going to make an awesome hire in the offseason, or FAU is going to re-sign him. And I believe FAU's headed to the American Conference. And, a lot of people were talking about at the end of the season that after Houston leaves the American Conference, it probably won't be a power conference anymore because it just has Memphis. Well, now you got FAU who looks legitimate. UAB should also be coming into that conference, who's a good basketball team. So, there's good teams coming in. I don't know if that's next season or the season after where they're coming in like that, but it's interesting if, whatever path Dusty May chooses, there's a lot of good things happening in Boca Raton right now. So, it's definitely interesting, but that's the first Final Four team. San Diego State, Maddie, we've both seen San Diego State play this season.
We did. My first thought was our bracketologist that we spoke to, Benji. He called that San Diego State Alabama upset. We all thought he was a little crazy, but here we are.
Yeah, definitely so. Game San Diego State beat Alabama. I didn't get to watch much of it because I was, traveling back from Las Vegas, but I caught the highlights. Wow. That's all I got to say. I have a play in a reset bracket group, and I penciled that in thinking remember what Benji had told us. He was like, yeah, I really like San Diego State over Alabama. And I'm like, you know what? San Diego State wins. It's 15 points in my bracket group or 20 points in my bracket group. Let me pencil that in. And if I lose it, I missed out on 5 points or whatever with Bama. So no big deal. So yeah, it was, San Diego State was the pick I chose in that bracket.
Victory for you there.
Do what?
a solid, sweet victory for you there.
Oh yeah, but like none of my Final Four teams hit. Like I think this is the first year I didn't get a single Final Four team right.
I
Um,
think a lot of people are in that same boat.
yeah.
Like we were talking about it at dinner on Sunday night, and there was one person in the bracket group that they were talking about that had UConn, and that was it.
Well, it was also, I went on that other show, the We Hate Your Team podcast, which go check out, especially when football season comes around. Really good show. But yeah, they invited me on to do their March Madness episode, and none of the teams that we picked made it past the Sweet 16. None of the teams we made it we actually lost them one at a time per round. One of the guys picked Purdue. Purdue loses to FDU in the first round. I picked Kansas. Kansas loses in the round of 32 to Arkansas. And then you've got out there in existence Houston. The other guy picked Houston, gets bumped in the Sweet 16, which was actually the way I predicted that one. So I actually got that right. When Houston was the one seed I liked the least. And here they are, the one seed that ties Bama as the one seed who made it furthest, which happened to be to the Sweet 16. So yeah, interesting how this all played out this year. But yeah, San Diego State, one of the teams that were at Maui this season. We talked about that a little bit last week about these multi-team events, but a team that won their multi-team event in the PK 85 is, of course, the UConn Huskies. Maddie, I was in Vegas for that Arkansas game. I have never seen a team play that dominant ever. And I mean, it hurt leaving that stadium, but after watching the Elite Eight basketball game and them obliterating Gonzaga also in the same weekend, holy cow. We knew this team was good, but they are playing the best basketball I've seen all season. Like, my word.
Yeah, that Gonzaga game made me feel a little bit better about being an Arkansas fan. I talked to some people about it, and they're just big. They're a huge team that gets a high field goal percentage, and I honestly think that they're going to dominate the rest of this tournament and take home the championship.
I agree with you. I think UConn's going to win this thing. Sanogo's a massive presence down low. He was the guy I was worried about going into that game. I was like, do not let him get hot. That was the we need Jalen Williams basketball game for Arkansas this year. It just what a big man. He can work. He can get the business done. He can also take 2 extra steps and the refs not catch it. But like that's here and there. Maybe I got a little bit of salt to watching that game, and I screamed, "He's traveling!" I don't know how many times they're gonna, but he's a physical big man down low. And then their ball movements fantastic around the perimeter. I misunderstood how good they were at ball movement until I saw it live. Like I'd watched them play on TV multiple times, and I was like, okay, they get they have a good assist ratio. This is a good team. They find open shots. When I watched it live, oh my word, it's like watching Bellarmine with a little bit more dribbling. Like they have things figured out. Like they rotate the ball to the best shot they can get every single possession. And like when I was watching that Sweet 16 game between them and Arkansas live, it was like every time Arkansas started finding momentum, they settled down, found a good shot, made a mature play, and it was just smart basketball all the way around. Arkansas got beat. Like they didn't lose. They got beat. Like there was nothing like fundamental. Like that was one of the best basketball teams I think I've seen. People want to say there's not a good team this season. No, they're just severely underrated. They were severely underseeded, and they've had a couple of snags throughout the conference play. And I think the Big East might have been a little misunderstood this year because just like the SEC, they got 3 teams into the second weekend, and now they got a Final Four team, and I don't know who's going to stop them. Like it's crazy. Big East is the basketball conference of they play basketball. And they do a great job at it. And UConn's got a tradition of being a very good basketball team. So I don't know. That was an incredible performance I saw from them in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. I'm with you. UConn just seems to me to be the national champion that I think is coming this way right now. Do you have anything else to add about the Huskies before we jump to Miami? I know I'm talking a lot today.
Sorry, I was about to sneeze and then I lost my train of thought.
Just so much talking. You're clearly allergic to just everything that's coming out of my mouth because we have no SEC basketball to talk about right now.
I mean, I think it might be, like the trees coming back in bloom and all this crazy Arkansas weather. But sure, we can call it that if you want to.
Yeah, we can just blame it on my and don't worry, I've got the censor button. But yeah,
Somebody wanted to blame it on my dog. I said, absolutely not. No, don't put that.
It's not the dog. It's not the dog. It's never the dog. I, well, I will live with sneezing if I ever find out I'm allergic to dogs, like 100%, until I can afford like a Portuguese water hound or whatever the Obamas had. Um, anyway, let's talk about the fourth team to make it to the NCAA tournament or not the NCAA tournament, the Final Four this season, and that is the Miami Hurricanes. Miami was a team that not a lot of people had going deep. I had them in my Elite Eight. They were the team I had beating Houston, which they did, and then walked the rest of the way through. I did not have them going to the Final Four. I will not claim that for a second. As I said, I had no Final Four teams, but one thing I just want to note on Miami basketball, last year was their first appearance in the Sweet 16, if I do, like one of their very few appearances in the Sweet 16. This is their first Final Four, if I'm not mistaken. And Miami basketball has improved consistently over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think I had them losing to Houston, so that's where I went wrong on this one.
Again, I didn't like Houston coming into the whole thing, so but no, I didn't see them beating Texas 88-81. That did not cross my mind. I also didn't have Texas in my Elite Eight. I had Xavier, but yes, I was right. This is their very first Final Four, and last year was their first Elite Eight, not Sweet 16, their first Elite Eight. And it was their first Sweet 16 in 6 years when they beat Auburn last year. So it's an impressive bunch. They've got a good situation. I'm really not sure how to pronounce their coach's last name, so I'll just call him Jimmy L for now. He's taken 12 years to build this team into something pretty reputable, and he's done a pretty darn good job getting Miami where they are right now. And you know what? This is why you look for coaches who have good tournament records. I mean, he's 16-10 in the history of the NCAA tournament in his record. So clearly he's getting his guys to go deeper and deeper every year. So he's building something special there in Miami.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like, he's just a coach that kind of tells you the story of, it takes a while to build a good program. Like you said, first Elite Eight last year, couple Sweet 16s under his belt. A lot of people will hire a coach and say, well, he's done good in the past, so he should have this program up and running in 2-3 years.
Yeah. And everybody's got the impression it's like, oh, you can build a team out of the transfer portal in 3 years. You can build a competitive team in 2 to 3 years, or really in a season.
Get over yourself.
Yeah, but you could make a competitive team, but it takes a while for to get it right. Like sometimes you check that formula, so you're looking for everything. Miami could just be just as well win this thing as UConn. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it's that could happen just the same as anything else. This is a team that's played some quality opponents throughout the year. They may be a little bit underappreciated for how good they are. This was a team that was very dominant in the ACC this year. I'm very impressed with the way that program's been built. All right, I think we kind of spelled the bag, but who do you've got winning this thing this weekend?
I think I see UConn. As I said with Kansas before the upset, if a team's gonna win, I want to be the team that beats Arkansas. But I say that as a joke, but after the Arkansas game, we didn't play well, so it was one of those things like, oh yeah, they might be a good team, they might not. But then after that Gonzaga game, I feel like they proved their
firm at that point, wasn't it? Yeah.
I don't think anybody's coming across them that they can't take on at this point.
Very, very true. I'm with you. I think UConn's the best team left out of the 4 that are here. Like I said, they're a tremendous team. And also just like I mentioned in the last show, multiple teams who have won their multi-tournament event back in November around Feast Week. That's normally the national champion is one of the teams who won that. And of course, UConn's the champion of the PK 85. I don't believe anybody else on this list. I'd have to check to see if FAU played in one. I'm not sure. They probably played in a small one, but but my point is that UConn's got the reputation and they beat some good talented teams to get to this point. All right, Maddie. So because we're done talking about SEC basketball really until we get to transfer portal news next week. With everybody's season being done, I compiled a list here. All right. Okay. And on this list, do what?
So that's a big list.
Yeah, well, it's actually just the bottom bar. There's actually like a line here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I'm sure everybody who just watched that on their big screen just saw all my notes. Actually, no, my handwriting's a little. You can't read my handwriting, so I can't even read my own handwriting. So we'll see if I remember what I wrote. And get through these hieroglyphics or without a Rosetta Stone. But I'm gonna read a headline or just a sentence fragment, really, that I thought of to describe everybody's season. And then I want you to tell me if you agree, disagree, and why.
Okay. I like
Okay.
it.
All right, let's do this. All right. So Alabama, this is what I have. Overachieved as the number one overall. Did not match their best finish this season. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously that's kind of a statement, but as so much as like overachieved this season, would you agree or disagree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. I think kind of beginning of the season we expected them to be middle of the pack, decent growing program, but when it came to the SEC, they proved that they were the dominant opponent. You know, at their game was everybody's Super Bowl, as
Yeah,
a couple people were saying.
I'm with you that I'm with you that way. Alabama this season, I believe, was picked fifth in the SEC preseason poll and all that stuff. The one that had Kentucky one, Arkansas two. Alabama was picked fifth. They were selected as a possible dark horse. But yeah, they were picked to finish behind several teams. And then Brandon Miller turned out to be just an incredible player, which we all thought that was going to happen, but it was Noah Clowney who really made that team so much better and it gave them another level of depth. But yeah, they achieved the number one overall seed. I think it's a little disappointing that they did not match their all-time best of making an Elite Eight, which to me, I don't know, this seems to me like the most talented Alabama team of all time. And then, to not go any deeper than a team that, it's been several years since Alabama. They've got one Elite Eight all time. So if you're looking for the only bad part, I think that's it. And we'll get to another discussion here in a little bit. Let's talk about Auburn. Okay. So this is, I should rephrase this. This is the thing that I think like these teams will be remembered for their season. And I'm just asking if you agree or disagree.
So, are you prefacing that because you don't think Auburn's going to be remembered this season?
No, that's not how I was going to say that, but kind of. My my line is that I wrote down just like in my little sentence fragment. No sweet 16 again after Final Four in 2018. That's last year. So go ahead. And then I can explain my thought process with that little sentence fragment.
I mean,
That's what they're going to be remembered for this year.
That's accurate. I think, it's going to be one of those seasons that Auburn fans are going to look back on and wonder what happened with all the potential that they had.
Yeah. So Auburn in 2019, of course, was their last Final Four. They haven't been back to the Sweet 16 since then. They didn't make the tournament due to, I believe, their own reasons in the 2020-2021 season. And then last year, they won the SEC regular season. They, touched number one in the polls, and then they didn't make it out of the round of 32 after they lost to Miami last year. So, and here we are again. They're coming into the season. They were picked fourth in the SEC preseason poll at the beginning of the year. Can't get past Houston in Birmingham, Alabama. Can't get past Houston in Birmingham, Alabama, where you have home court advantage. So I think that's going to be remembered again is like, was the Final Four a couple of years ago just a fluke and a lucky run? I think that's going to be the question that's going to be starting to have as long as Bruce Pearl continues a trend of not getting anywhere in the postseason. We'll see. I think that's the thing that this season kind of reminds what I think wraps Auburn up. I don't know. Do you have a different thought of what this Auburn team will be remembered for this year?
No, I mean, I see it. I feel like they had a couple dominant players. And for me, I think on seasons that are more disappointing, I more so remember the performance of individual players over, well, that team didn't do very good. I'm like, well, Wendell Green had an excellent season.
Yeah, I gotcha. I mean, that makes sense. They had some really powerful guys like Janai Broom. Janai Broom was a force down low this season for Auburn. But there are also just times where they just, lost massive amounts of games at a time. So it's weird. It's a weird team. All right. So next up alphabetically, or actually that's not alphabetically. I don't know why I flipped Arkansas and Auburn around. That's that Arkansas education, everyone. But Arkansas, I have written down here, letdown year, plagued by injury, but third straight second weekend. Is that all Arkansas fans will remember this season?
I think the letdown is probably the biggest portion. I think, just and we're so immersed in it because we're both in Arkansas. It's one of those that there was so much hype behind this team, so much promise that, this was going to be our year, even though that's what we think every year. And football, basketball, baseball, whatever you like.
Well, yeah.
Just high hopes for our sports. And
it hasn't been our year in football in a long time. Let's clarify that. But I don't think we've talked about winning a national championship in football since about this year. But anyway,
just always hopes for better, I think. And, this year, I think the national championship was on everybody's mind before the season even got started. And it just took a slippery slope downhill quickly.
Yeah, the injuries, obviously, I think that's what's going to be probably remembered the most out of that. But, you're talking about a team that's made 3 second weekends in a row now for a program that just a few years ago, that's why they fired their last coach. Mark Anderson was fired from Arkansas, not because he wasn't successful at Arkansas. It's because he couldn't take this team to another week, to deeper into the NCAA tournament. And now they're beginning to achieve that thing that they had done in the 90s and 70s and 80s. So I mean, it's kind of the signs that yes, it was a down year for Arkansas. Yes, there's reasons it was a down year for Arkansas, but they're still achieving the goals that they set out to get back to that level. That's why I put in that second weekend note. That's kind of how I remember this season, but that's also me. I know that in a lot of fans' minds, they're upset because they didn't win. We didn't go into a Final Four this year. I think for people who are very logical basketball people, and especially the ones who put great emphasis on March performance, like myself, to me, that was great. That was adequate. That was totally adequate.
Highlight that's going to be remembered. Obviously, we beat another number 1 seed, second year in a row.
That's true.
And, I'm trying to remember the stat now. But Kansas was, I feel like 40 something's a high number, but it was 42-0 when leading by 8 at the half.
Yeah. Well, it was Arkansas doing that. Yeah, Arkansas joined that class of only 4 programs in NCAA tournament history to do it in back-to-back seasons. And then add on top of it, I'm not sure how many have done that, to also beat the AP number 1 team in that same 2-year frame. Because then they had Auburn, who was the number 1 team in that last season. Then they beat Gonzaga, who was the number 1 overall team in the tournament. Then they beat Kansas, a 1 seed. So, I mean, that's 3 number 1s down in 2 years. So that's going to be something that's going to be completely forgotten, but it shouldn't be left by the wayside. That's an impressive streak. But I'll circle it. Like I said, this year was a letdown. It was a letdown, but I'm okay with living with that because we know why it was a letdown. Injury bug hit pretty hard this season, but is what it is. All right. Next team, the Florida Gators. An almost entirely forgettable year.
100% agree with that one.
Yeah. I mean, this team did nothing. And I feel bad for Todd Golden telling me that because he's going to put a good team together in Florida. He is. But there's nothing that I will remember greatly about this Florida. Their win against Oklahoma in the Jumpman. Did they even win that game? I'm not even sure. I can't even remember. That's how forgettable it is.
I mean, to be fair, Golden's first year, they had a few good games. As much as I was not a fan, I'm a little sad for Colin Castleton.
Yeah.
Had to deal with a disappointing year. And then at the end of the year, when they were starting to get a little bit better, he gets injured.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough for a guy to go out like that. You don't want to see that. Even if if guy's a villain, his character's a villain out there on the best. It's like Christian Leitner. Everybody hated Christian, but like, and truthfulness, no one wanted to see him get hurt. At least logical people, reasonable human beings, did not want to see him get hurt. It's the same way with Castleton. He's the most punchable face in the SEC. In truth, you don't want the kid to get hurt at all. You love it. I'm sure Anthony Black was a villain to a lot of people this season. As an Arkansas fan, he had an attitude on him, and I remember Arkansas fans saying if he wasn't a Razorback, we'd hate his guts. We really would. But he ended up with us. But it is what it is. It is an unfortunate ending, but in all, like Todd Golden's first year in Gainesville, I mean, it's kind of like a forgettable year entirely. I don't know how anyone will ever think about that, which is also a weird theme in Florida. They talked about this on college basketball podcast. Florida was like in 2011, I believe, at 1 seed, and no one seems to remember that happening.
Yeah.
It's like this 1 seed of all time. No one remembers this 1 seed Florida team.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think we talked about it. Not last week, but like the week before. And I did not remember at all. Like when I was doing my notes, I was like, wait a second.
Florida. Yep. Writing the notes down, totally forgot to write down anything about Florida. That's just the season. And I think Florida fans, judging by the way they interacted with us on social media at times, I don't even think they knew basketball was going on this year. That's what it was like. So yeah, completely forgettable year for Todd Golden. But you know what? There's a future tomorrow, and I think Florida will be a team that gets going somewhere next season. All right, the next team I have on the list are the Georgia Bulldogs. Significantly better than last year.
I would agree with that.
I think that's an objective fact at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I agree.
That's the thing this team will be remembered for, is being significantly better than last year's team.
To a point. I think we got to give them a little extra hype.
Okay.
We said that they would be one of the worst teams in the conference. Granted, they weren't the best.
They kind of were.
For a first-year coach without, I mean, no offense to the boys, but without any solid, memorable talent.
Yeah, outside of Roberts,
I mean, they had some good wins against strong teams. They put up a good fight against a couple of very strong teams. And, I think maybe if I was a Georgia Bulldog fan, I would look at this season with hope and remember it for the start of something big in Georgia basketball.
That's a good idea. This is a great starting point for the Mike White's year. This was a great starting point. That might be the better headline there. Yeah, that's a good way to put that. I think you got the better slant on it. The headline should be, or the sentence fragment should be, launch pad, or launch pad moment for Georgia.
Insert High School Musical, the start of something new.
Yeah, start of something new. You know what? Before we get to Kentucky, let's take a commercial break.
Let's be honest, you're here because you love sports. We love sports too. And our friends over at Row One Brand love sports as much as we do. Row One Brand sells sports wall art, sports gift watches, and vintage apparel with ornamental designs created from real game ticket stubs and vintage sports memorabilia in their collection. If you want some vintage Golden State Warriors memorabilia, they have that too. It's a sports collector's dream website for anything sports related. Go over to row1brand.com to check out their great inventory. And when you use the promo code VSP15, you'll get 15% off any item on the whole site. That's code VSP15 for 15% off any item on the site. So click on the link below and go check them out. Row Run Brands, America's best vintage sports art, sports gifts.
Yep. All right, so we've got our next team here. I've got Kentucky written down, and my little note here for what I think this Kentucky team will be remembered for is kind of the opposite of Alabama. Underachieved, but had a solid turnaround.
I would agree with that. I think fans can be happy about the fact that they were looking at a lot of doom and gloom the first half of the season, turned it around, got to the tournament, had a couple good games.
avoided the 7 through 10 seeds of death lines. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, maybe sigh of relief is my feeling if I was a Kentucky fan.
Yeah, that would be very, very that'd be a good way to remember that. I think this Kentucky team, when I say underachieved, let's not forget this was the team that was picked to win the SEC.
Yeah,
And I'm going to put money on it right now. I'm going to put $5 on this table, and you can take this bet or not. Kentucky will be picked to win the SEC next year too, and the preseason poll.
I need to see the rosters before.
You should go look who has the number 1 recruiting class in the country. Yeah, they have several good players. We're talking about one of the best recruiting classes in Kentucky history coming in to Kentucky next season. But yeah, they'll be picked. We'll see how good they are. The Arkansas can tell you about this season. Is like, yeah, we had some 5 stars and some 4 stars, but
that's what I said. I'm gonna need to see the roster first. See who stays, who goes. The transfer portal has been hot according to Ben Brandon, so that'll be interesting to dive into.
We should bring Ben Brandon on the show next week. I was reading his Substack today. But anyway, going through, we got some interesting transfers to talk about next week. So I'm waiting to do the first transfer episode until all the transfers are in. And after the Final Four is when after the national championship that's when the tidal wave just hits. But Caleb Love.
Wait 2 weeks.
Do what?
So we might even wait 2 weeks, get those last minute stragglers time to make a decision.
Well, Caleb Love's in the portal right now, and I tell Arkansas fans go crazy about that one. And I was like, yes, we want that. We want that a lot. Yes. But yeah. Anyway, that was Kentucky underachieved this season as the preseason SEC favorite to win it all. Of course, neither you nor me believed that. We were like, we'll take the field in this. When we were talking about it earlier this season, but yeah, underachieved. But then they kind of righted the ship in February, got to a 6 seed. They won a tournament game, which is something they hadn't done in a little bit. Yep. So good for Kentucky for getting themselves on board, and Cal probably bought himself one more season before this new recruiting class comes in, which will be a highly entertaining recruiting class out of Kentucky next season. So underachieved, but solid turnaround. Do we agree with the headline?
I agree with that one.
Okay. So, all right, let's talk about LSU. Strong start, train wreck end. What happens next? That's those comma in that one is how I wrote that up. Maddie, your thoughts?
Do we really want to say strong start?
I mean, they only lost 1 game.
Oh, you mean preseason?
Yeah, well, non-conference. Yeah, they did great in non-conference. They looked like they were going to make the NCAA tournament in non-conference.
Okay, I'll agree with that. I thought I was like, well, they beat Arkansas and that was it. But
well, yeah, they really looked good at that point. We were like, what LSU do? No one thought they were going to be this good. Like we thought there was an outsider's chance they'd pull an 11 seed, but what is going on here? Then 1 loss, and then all of a sudden, the train wreck happened.
Yeah.
Shortly
followed. I don't know if we could call it a train wreck because it wasn't like anything even got in their way. A train derailment. Like
that's fair. It is a total derailment. Yeah, no, they just fell apart in the conference play. I was amazed they won a game, and I guess McMahon needed like a little bit of momentum. Going into this offseason because winning that one SEC tournament game helped a lot. Would have got real interesting if they beat Vanderbilt. I would have been sitting down and like, oh, let's go LSU. Let's win the whole thing. Win the SEC tournament. I want to see a whole SEC team will probably get a 14 seed if they make the tournament at this point. That would be, give me the ugliest child at the ball. Give it to me. I want all of that. I want all of that. But of course I never get what I want. So one day I'm going to get a team that won 2 conference games in the regular season to win the freaking tournament in a power conference. And that team's going to end up as a 14 or 13 seed, or this year there was the chance that Cal or Louisville, if they had managed to win their conference tournament, probably would have been 16 or 15 seeds. Just horrible power conference teams to win that. I'll get my wish someday. It'll happen. I promise. It'll happen someday.
Maybe Georgia next year, like we said, start something new.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the direction Georgia's headed. We're gonna have. I mean, like I'm talking someone bad. But like we'll see. But yeah, what happens next for LSU? That's really the question because like they haven't made any huge splashes in recruiting. We don't know.
They dig deep in the transfer portal this year.
You what?
I think they dig deep in the transfer portal this year, and they keep their fingers crossed and throw up a prayer.
They're gonna have to find a shooter. They're gonna have to find somebody who can rebound, because that's a rough basketball team right now. But again, McMahon's doing what he can do with what he's got. There's no logical reason that people should be like, oh my God, that man was working with nothing coming into the job at LSU. And that was a daring jump from Murray State, a program he had going, and to take the jump at LSU. But yeah, I am curious what happens next. It'll be interesting to see what kind of talent they can bring in and whether or not they're going to take that next step to move forward. Speaking of LSU, before we get to the next headline, Will Wade has a job, and they hired him in McNeese State, and McNeese State already suspended him as terms of his contract. So he's going to serve a suspension before he can do anything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I don't know how you get around that, but
so does the suspension? No, I'm never mind. I'm not even going to get into that joke because it would have been rough.
All right, I couldn't think of how to make a joke out of this, but I really tried.
Okay.
But then eventually, I just changed it to what I have now, and there's no joke involved. But this is what I think Ole Miss will be remembered by this year. Bad. That's all I wrote. I wrote bad. I was trying to make a bad beard joke, or something like that. Because you buy like it's like when you take a dog and you hit it with a newspaper. It's like you're bad at basketball. You're bad at like hiring coaches. Like, what are you doing? Like, oh my!
I think our joke could have been when you said you couldn't make a joke out of it, and I said hit me with it. Then we automatically transferred to Chris Beard.
Oh, that would have been a great joke, right? Yeah, he's gonna do great there. Or he'll do a decent job. He'll win basketball games. This team, the next 3 years, will make the NCAA tournament. That's what's going to happen in Ole Miss, more than likely. That being said, I had a friend this year, and I'm not going to name anybody else's teams, but I'm going to say that this friend happens to be an alumni of a school who hired a certain coach in the offseason in a different sport that's very controversial. But the thing is no one seems to be talking about that coach being hired in football anymore. I just dropped that. But no one seems to be mentioning that individual because of all the other PR stuff that's been going on in this conference for the last, that coach could not hire a better PR team to save his image than what's been happening in this conference. And Ole Miss just laid down the money and said, we'll take that.
Yeah.
We're right there with you. We'll go for it. Yep.
Everybody else is making bad decisions. Let's jump on board.
Bad season, bad hire, bad everything in the world. I'm not saying the guy won't win basketball games, but like Dusty May was right there. You could have just gone and got Dusty May. Just do the right thing. Like, just do it.
Yeah.
Not hard to do. Pick a moral higher. Winning's more important. Dusty May wins too, man. This is what I'm saying. These are my frustrations in the universe of college athletics. But yes, my Ole Miss bad. That's the. Do you agree with the with my what this team will be remembered for this season?
I think we take a road similar to like I said with Auburn, and I think we see fans remember Matt Morrell, his injury. Burns was an excellent addition to that team.
Yeah.
So I think we take individual performance over seasonal performance.
Yeah, Matt Morrell was a great player. He was a very good player this year. I think they'll all remember Kermit Davis being fired this season.
Yeah, that might be the highlight there.
That might be the highlight. That might be the highlight of the year
But
because
the frog hops off.
the frog hops away. Frog gets kicked off the lily pad, and in comes. I'm not even gonna say it. All right, let's just move on. My name's Chris Beard. That's how I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna draw like a character on my finger, and every time I'm gonna do an interview with Chris Beard on a Zoom call one day, and it'll just be my finger. And like I'll just sit there. This is so weird. This is gonna get streamed later. And like I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna have a conversation with Chris Beard. That's what I'm gonna do.
I was already thinking we need to make a GIF out of here.
There's a lot of things that are going to be remembered for this. Alabama fans remember apparently wanting clips of me saying Roll Tide, and all sorts of funny stuff like that. And Mizzou fans. And then we're going to have my finger puppets next season that I'm going to like introduce on this show. They're just going to show up here and it's like, welcome to the show, Eric Musselman. And I can just have a finger puppet, Eric Musselman. I'm like, this is how I'm going to introduce people. People will stop watching this podcast in a heartbeat. I swear if I start doing weird stuff like that. Anyway, let's talk about the next team. The cousins, relatives of the other people who are from the state of Mississippi, the Magnolia State, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. This is what I wrote. I just wrote very simply, solid first year for Jans.
Yep, I agree with that one.
Think about it in any other way.
Yeah. Exceeded expectations.
Good.
You know, I think would have been a lot more memorable if they won that playing game, but
yeah, that would have taken it to new heights of momentum and coming for this team. But you know, you had one of the best defenses in the conference this season. You made the NCAA tournament. You know, good year for Jans, Chris Jans there in Mississippi State. That a hire they got right for the most part.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you know, it was a good pick for a coach. You know, like a lot of people wanted him. I think it was a pretty solid one. All right. For Mizzou, great first year under Gates, very similar to Mississippi State, but I've got a comma here. Time to build. And
yeah, for sure. I think they take the momentum off of this season and build that recruiting pool.
Yes.
Possibly pull from the transfer portal. You know, some of these bigger schools where people aren't getting playing time, they want a school that's on the right track, and I think Mizzou's the way to go. So I think we see some bigger names from other schools transfer over to Mizzou and really shine there next year under James King.
I think out of you know, historically speaking, Missouri is probably the best team in the SEC to never make the Final Four. You know, that might not even be a stretch to say historically. They might right now be the best team to never have gotten to a Final Four in the SEC. But you know, they got that team going in a good direction. Historically, just like I said, this team does have a track record of getting to Elite Eights and things like that. You got a coach who clearly can replicate that if he has talent to get them into the second weekend of March. You know, I don't think the Princeton game is anything that should leave a bad taste in any Mizzou fan's mouth. They probably shouldn't be talking a lot of smack to everybody else about the fact that when you lose to Princeton, but overall, in all reality, you shouldn't feel bad about that. Like, because I think you had such a fantastic season, it didn't matter anymore. Yeah, you got to the round of 32 in a season where people said you would be lucky to make the NCAA tournament. At the beginning of the season, we had watched a couple of Missouri games, and I was literally like, this team has no defense.
Yeah.
It turns out their defense was turnovers. They still really didn't have defense, but they had supplements to take to where they could get themselves surviving throughout the course of the season. Also, watching the first 2 or 3 games, I was sitting there going, okay, let's see them play a real basketball team. And then they played Kansas and got obliterated. But then that team immediately found its feet. And I think that was the moment that Mizzou became a legitimate basketball team, is how they responded after getting curb stomped by Kansas in their own house.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, you know, any coach that's a first year coach coming in, especially when you look at the talent, I don't want to say talent level difference because they had a lot of talented players on that team.
Guys who were experienced mid-major basketball players who came with Gates from Cleveland State, and they built a good team. like out of it, and they took what they could get.
But yeah, I think you look at a first year coach going to the NCAA tournament, and you have to automatically know that that program is going to go places when you give it more time to build.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, they if they get some good players to come in to Mizzou during the transfer portal this offseason, it'll be very, very promising. That has got to be the focus right now for Mizzou is nail the transfer portal, because you're kind of stuck with the recruits you got at this point. You might pick up a couple of guys along the way before signing day, but like as it stands right now, like, or before the last signing day, whatever, you need to hit that transfer portal as hard as possible and get the guys that you need to get, because it's doable. It really is. It's really doable to get this team into a second weekend next year, and on a against a regularly hard path. We're talking about a team that it could very well be a 5 seed next year, a 4 seed, depending on how much talent they get in. And that's not just saying that, like, I'm saying generally, like they could be in the top 16 in the country, or the top 20 in the country, like legitimately. They may be seated higher than that, but be amongst that group is what I'm trying to get at. So time to build for Mizzou is what it is, because you got everything else you need. You got the billboard of getting to around 32. You got the coach who's going to be there long term. Dennis Gates was someone I was suggesting for the Texas job earlier this season. Yeah, time to build a program. And I think that's what Mizzou will be remembered for this year. So go ahead. Do you have anything else to add on Missouri? I was just talking way too much tonight.
No, I totally get it. I see where you're coming from there. And I think, Dennis Gates should have won Coach of the Year, the way that he took that team that nobody thought was going to do anything and made a solid stance in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, definitely so. All right. So the next team we have, the South Carolina Gamecocks. Rough year, but it's year 1. That's what I've got written. And then I have, like, in parentheses, GG Jackson. GG Jackson will go to the NBA and he'll represent this team down throughout his NBA career. And it'll be great for South Carolina. But this was a rough year for Lamont Paris in South Carolina. And that's really what it's going to be remembered as. It's going to be remembered as a rough year, and a year that everybody thought it was going to be rough. I think I had South Carolina picked to finish last at the in my personal writings this season when we started the blog and everything like that. The blog that we did not keep up throughout the entire course of the year. That's how fast that thing died. But when we wrote the blog, South Carolina, I think I wrote last place. Does worse than Georgia, question mark. That's what I put together, and they were not good. They pretty much lived up to expectations there.
But I think maybe this season puts a bad taste in the mouths of those South Carolina players that are going to stick around, and hopefully they decide that that's not what they want for themselves next year and step it up.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a process. And South Carolina, yeah, I don't think next year we'll watch what happens in the transfer portal and everything else, but I don't think they're going to be there next year. But they might make the NIT. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We just got to watch and be patient to see what happens next. But South Carolina, I think it's going to be. It's 3 to 4 years out, and that included this year. So about in the next 3 years, I would anticipate, if things are going well with Lamont Paris, year 4 would be the year that you're talking about a 9-8 seed, unless he just gets some great talent in, and it just takes really some 1 year of good momentum. But give the guy as much time as Buzz got in Texas A&M, and maybe he'll get a crew for you.
Yep, I can see that happening. Like you said, we spotlight on GG Jackson. No offense to the other guys, but really the only memorable player on that team. And, I feel like Lamont Paris did a good job trying to build a respectable team around him. You just got to have more talent to get anywhere, especially in the SEC.
I think it'll be helpful when GG Jackson is in the NBA and you can point. It's like, that guy, I coached that guy. I made him a better basketball player. He's in the NBA. He was a first-round draft pick. That's what you want, right? And he can help get some guys, some guys who want to go to the league someday into that team and get some 3-4 star talent in there and build a really, really good basketball program. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a process. And
I think we're definitely looking at a stair-step process in South Carolina where, they finished in the bottom, step up a couple,
yeah,
maybe 8 or 9 spot, then slowly work their way up.
I can't wait till next week when we start talking about the transfer portal and to see like what happened, in that first wave of like what's been going down. And we look at Substack and see what's going on. So I can't wait for that next week. All right, let's talk about Tennessee. This is what I wrote down. Barnes gets to the 16. WTF ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he got further than we assumed he would at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
He didn't choke in the first round.
Mm-hmm. The anti-Rick Barnes. He did poorly in the SEC tournament, then made the Sweet 16 in the NCAA. This is not the Rick Barnes we had normally seen in Tennessee. Like, what happened here?
I think looking at the overall season, though, I feel like the best descriptor for that is roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal, unstoppable Tennessee team. We saw some terrible losses. We see them build back up, crash in the tournament.
Great games
against the SEC tournament.
Alabama. Yeah. And then they make the Sweet 16 and are gifted a 9 seed in the Sweet 16. And it's like, yes, Barnes, take Tennessee to their next Elite 8. They're like, yes, we can do this. This is as far as Tennessee's ever gone, and the NCAA can't do it. Can't do it. But how many times did we talk about like the storyline this season was Rick Barnes has to get this team to the Sweet 16 or there's going to be problems.
He did it.
He did it. The storyline has been succeeded. He got this team to the second weekend. So congratulations.
I guess next year we just need to say he needs to get to the third weekend to secure a spot or.
Yep. But you know what? Your roller coaster is also an appropriate catchword for Tennessee here. It'd be like roller coaster. Barnes makes the Sweet 16, WTF. It's like, yeah, that's exactly the best way to describe Tennessee in a sentence fragment this year. All right, Texas A&M. 4 years with Buzz, big turnaround.
They had so much momentum, especially going into the end of the season when people started to really recognize, hey, Texas A&M is a pretty good program. They're sitting over here second in the SEC, and nobody's really talking about them.
Yeah.
So I think we see, Buzz kind of masterfully working his way into one of those top spots and making the tournament. And, just proving that he deserves to be up there with the rest of them.
Yeah, he did a great job. He got this team to where it needed to go. And like I said, the beginning of the season, what is the old saying about Buzz Williams? Give him 4 years, he will get your team to the NCAA tournament. He did it. Probably would like to go further than what they did, given how much momentum they had. But it is what it is. He got him to the NCAA tournament. Let's see him continue to take this team. Be very interested to see what happens in Texas A&M next. To see what kind of talent he can get in there. Just say, hey, look, we did it. Now, come on, I need people. So we'll see. Buzz did it. Buzz got the job done. Texas A&M got to start winning some tournament games next year. I think that's the goal, is to not get bumped out in the round of 64. But we'll definitely see. All right, let's talk about the very last team that comes up, and that is Vandy. You want to take a guess what I wrote down before I even say it?
I'm just trying to think of like where your mind goes, and I feel like there are 2 tracks that we could go down, but I'm not
Vanderbilt,
sure.
like my 2 tracks that like what I wrote down with Vanderbilt and how I think about Vanderbilt. Is that what you're getting at? I didn't know I had 2 tracks with Vanderbilt.
Well, I mean, with as much as you dogged them at the beginning of the year and the way they ended the season, I feel like there's a split there.
Yeah, but who was ultimately right?
I mean, you were.
Yeah, because I said this team's not making the tournament.
Yeah, no.
And I said they're not making the tournament for why, Maddie?
Because they didn't win when it mattered.
Okay, so what I wrote down for Vanderbilt, because you're on the right track, is don't screw yourself in November. Like, just don't do it. Like, you can talk about how the schedule didn't favor you and all this stuff, and like how the RPI is better than the net and everything. You know what? We don't use that stuff. And the reason your team didn't make the NCAA tournament is because you got beat by 1 billion by Alabama. You lost quad 4 and quad 3 basketball games. You were never going to get there without winning the SEC tournament. Don't screw yourself in November. Don't do it.
Like, so you know what? Like, my thoughts on Vanderbilt, like if we could put it into an animation, I think like the old like Looney Tunes when you got Wile E. Coyote and the Road Runner.
Yep.
There's like a super long what do you call that thing? It's not but you know, like the thing that you light when it goes up to the rocket.
The fuse. Yeah, the fuse. Yeah.
The fuse. That's the word. Sorry. Brain fog from all the allergy medicine I'm taking. Their fuse was way too long. And it just got cut off right before they got to the rocket.
Before it ever got to the rocket, so they could never take off. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I also have another note here. It says Stackhouse deserves a better job.
I could see it.
He absolutely does.
I mean, I think better job, or he just deserves. I don't know if I don't know his coaching staff well, but maybe a better recruiting coach, like head of recruiting.
Better recruiting coordinator, get him some dudes. Like, you know, because
better talent in there to match his talent as coach.
Yeah. That's definitely part of the issue. Look, if Jerry Stackhouse isn't in the NBA or Jerry Stackhouse needs to go coach like Georgetown. Like, he needs to go coach one, like I said, mentioned earlier about where Dusty May is going to end up. Like, he needs to coach one of those level teams, like an Arkansas, a Villanova, a Georgetown. Probably Syracuse is in that mix. Those 1 to 2 national championship teams with consistent histories. Or one of those schools, not blue bloods, but the next step down, that grouping right there. Whatever you want to call them. Really good programs that aren't blue bloods. That's the group of coach. That's where he deserves to be if he's going to continue to coach college basketball. Like, some of those schools need to go take a risk on him and save him, because like he's probably the best X's and O's coach in the SEC, and he does not deserve to be at a school that's given him really nothing. Like, I just haven't seen talent there. This is a team that doesn't have a history of going far into the NCAA tournament. He needs to go to a school that's very dedicated to basketball, because like that's his talent will match that, and he'll be very successful there, because we saw how he got a team that was terrible at the beginning of this season, and got them to a point where people were like, they should make the NCAA tournament, even though that was never going to happen. But people believed it because they looked really good on the eye test at the end of the season. That was a totally different basketball team that existed in November to March. Totally different basketball team, but they were already messed over. Like, they had already dug themselves into such a deep hole that they were freaking, I forget what character did it, but, you know, Bruce Wayne, who was in the hole in episode 3 of Batman, Christopher Nolan's Batman, where he's trying to pull himself out of the hole. That's exactly what they were doing, and they just kept falling down. And like that, you know, they were never getting out of that hole. They weren't born in the darkness, so like they weren't getting there.
No, I think we see, you know, one less Q4 or one less Q3 loss
next year. Yeah, probably a good idea.
Yeah. No, I mean this year, like maybe they had a chance if they didn't have so many bad losses earlier this season.
Yeah. Well, like I said, they messed themselves over by getting obliterated by Alabama. That messed their metrics up massively. They looked terrible at times this season. Could not beat teams from bad conferences like the Atlantic 10 with George Washington when they went on the road to play them. George Washington did not win the Atlantic 10. They weren't even in the Atlantic 10 championship. You also got losses to Grambling State. Southern Miss, who was not in the NCAA tournament, was getting talked about with a little bit of hype or whatever. They weren't smelling it. There were better teams in Conference USA. That's where Southern Miss is, if I remember correctly. But there's better teams out there that were going to make the tournament. You had UAB and clearly FAU coming out of that conference who were fantastic. Vanderbilt lost to teams they should have never lost to. That should have been inexcusable to lose to. Fireable offense losses.
I think
any other.
Yeah, when you're competing in a conference like the SEC, the Big 10, Big 12, you got to look at, those preseason games. Like, if we aren't coming out with a winning record here, we don't have a chance once we get into December, beginning of January.
Yep, 100%. 100%. All right, we're going to take one more commercial break here, and then me and Maddie are going to get into a discussion that I'm really been seeing on social media, and I'm kind of laughing at. If you're an Alabama or Arkansas fan, feel free to stick around for this. If you don't want to hear any more, we get it. But I think Arkansas fans might want to stick around for this because, we're both Arkansas fans, so we'll probably take that by side in this discussion. All right, see you after the commercial break.
You know what I like? I like to be comfortable. I also love representing my favorite sports teams. And in the Clutch, I am able to have the best of both worlds. In the Clutch Apparel is your one-stop shop for all things sports. They have officially licensed gear from all your favorite teams and players from the NHL, MLB, NFL, and more. They have sports classic tees from yesteryear and beyond. Check out their full website in the link down below. When you enter the promo code Variety Sports, you get 10% off everything site-wide. Feel comfortable with your sports apparel and go over to their website now at intheclutch.com. And don't forget to use our code Variety Sports to get 10% off.
All right, Maddie, let's talk about this real fast. Put that football down while I'm spinning around during the commercial break there. All right, let's talk about this. I've been seeing this on social media, and I just want to throw my 2 cents in. Again, I think we all know what side I'm ending up on this conversation, but this is part of the perspective. And I do think there's a reason that not only besides what side of the fandom you're on, that this debate is occurring and why you feel justified in what you're saying, but there's also a logical reason why both sides are right, quote unquote. So over the last 3 seasons, whose performance would you rather take? Nate Oates or Eric Musselman's?
So we're talking strictly performance here.
There are 3 years of being at Alabama and there are 3 years of being at Arkansas, the last 3 seasons. Which coach's performances would you rather have?
I'm taking Eric Musselman all day. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a Razorback fan.
I agreed. I'm right there with you. I'm taking Eric Musselman all day long. But let me hear your reason why you say that.
So, I mean, if you put the two coaches side by side in a blind test where you can't see where they're at, I mean, you look at Arkansas, we've got Sweet 16, 2 Elite Eights in the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the NBA talent that's been taken from those teams. I mean, you've got one of them that is leading 3-point percentage with the OKC Thunder. One of them was leading charge in the NBA's, also at the OKC Thunder. Bobby Portis is, in my opinion...
Bobby Portis is my game.
Bobby Portis, no. Sorry, I just love BP.
Everybody does.
We got Moses Moody, who is making his way up at Golden State. So, I mean, you look at longevity of your program, we see, more eyes, I feel like, at Arkansas for much better terms than Alabama currently has on them because of his lasting effects.
Yeah. So that's the NBA perspective is one that I didn't really even think that hard on, actually. And you're right. The NBA comparative performance, I think Musselman is blowing Nate Oates out of the water. This is, especially when you talk about how many guys they got in the G League under Eric Musselman. You walk into Razorback Stadium 10 minutes before tip or 20 minutes before tip off, and you just see it coming down, like how many NBA flashcards we have. Before I didn't even consider that before I started thinking about this question. But again, I'm with you on Eric Musselman. And like I said, I don't think it's just because I'm a Razorback fan, but to me, performances in March matter so much more than conference titles or conference tournament wins. You heard me literally say a few good episodes ago on the podcast before the SEC tournament even got started. I said, I don't care if Arkansas wins the SEC tournament. I don't give a rat's behind. Like, I don't. To me, like, they don't matter. They're stupid and they have the potential to cause injuries. And like the only fans who like that are people who are like, well, this is for the keep your ignorant, like you keep your stupidity away. There's nothing enjoyable. Like you get to enjoy basketball games. Congratulations. Conference tournaments are stupid. So I don't care who wins the dang thing. Vanderbilt could have won it. LSU, I just told you minutes ago, I was cheering for LSU to win the SEC tournament just for sheer chaos. Like, I don't care who wins the SEC tournament. So Nate Oates winning 2 in the last 2 seasons, or two of the last 3 seasons, that's a non-flush it down the toilet thing to me. That is one of the most useless trophy I think that exists out there. And Tennessee fans can get upset because they won their second one, the in between that Nate Oates sandwich there. Then the SEC conference title, that's great also. Like, to me, that's the most legitimate thing Nate Oates has done. Getting his team to win the SEC regular season. Those are significant accomplishments. But Maddie, can you name who the SEC champion was in 2015?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Can you name it from 2016? Just off the top of your head. 2017.
I want to say Auburn, but that doesn't feel right.
Yeah. I think it was actually Kentucky. But 2018.
That one was Auburn, wasn't it?
Auburn was 2019.
No.
But this is what I'm getting at. All right, this is exactly what I'm getting at, is that, like, you think a couple of years back, you don't remember who the regular season champion is in the SEC, and your guess is 9 out of 10 times ought to be Kentucky. And that all truthfulness. But what did Kentucky?
I feel like unless you're a fan, it's not going to matter and you're not going to remember it.
No, 100%. But teams remember teams who made the elite, the Final Four and the Elite Eight. Like we were just talking a second ago, like when we kicked off the show about performances in March, like, what program did what. We talked about all these SEC schools that have never won or been to a Final Four. I think that's where the difference is. Like, I think, like, for instance, I can talk about the 1985, like we talked about this, the 1985 Final Four. I literally told you it was 3 Big East teams in St. John's, Georgetown, in St. John's, Georgetown's Villanova, who was the national champion that year, along with Memphis, who was at the time Memphis State. That's just knowledge I have. Like, that's just random knowledge. I can probably go back and tell you that George Mason got to a Final Four, in my head. And I cannot think about St. Peter's run will be remembered for a long time of getting to the Elite Eight from last year. That'll be very fresh in everyone's memory. UMBC beating Virginia. That was the first 16 seed to ever beat a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Performances in the NCAA tournament in March Madness matter significantly more. So I would trade that in a heartbeat. And I think where that also comes from, and this is where I think the division actually is between Arkansas and Alabama fans, is the historic reasons behind it. Like I said, I've been comparing just subtly Arkansas to Villanova, the 2 and 1 seed or 1 national championship group with 5+ Final Fours. Those are teams that have all played significantly well in March, and that's how they think about their programs. Arkansas fired Mike Anderson because he didn't do well in March. It was not because he didn't win an SEC championship. It was not because he wasn't in the final in 20. Bobby Portis was there. I can't even remember that year. I remember Bobby Portis. No, Bobby Portis wasn't. It was Moses Kingsley. Bobby Portis was another year. But my point is that, like, Mike Anderson never won an SEC tournament, but that was never the reason he was going to get fired in Arkansas. He was going to get fired from Arkansas because he could not get past the round of 32. That's all we care about. like we fire coaches on their performances in March. We don't fire them based on where they finished in the SEC standings. And I think that's the cultural difference, because Alabama historically, and this is an offense because I think the Tide are going in a great direction in their program.
Yeah.
Historically in March has been a non-factor historically in their program. So I don't think they have that as a measuring stick mentally in there. They see their performance in the SEC as more important compared to Kentucky, Arkansas, and Florida, who consider probably March Madness a much more significant portion of their season.
Yeah. And I think, when it comes down to notoriety and reputation, if you're looking at the average basketball fan, or even people that may not be a basketball fan, but just get in when it comes to March and they want to fill out brackets and they, want to talk to their friends about this, they're going to look at those teams like, hey, I remember Arkansas being in this last year. I remember them being in it the year before. So you're going to look at that, like you said, more historical point, whether it's with a basketball fan or not. Some people are going to notice, they're going to know UNC, they're going to know Duke, they're going to know those bigger name schools because they've been around longer in the year than other teams.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Like Syracuse is like one of those teams that I don't know, like they don't have that many compared to other teams of conference titles, but they've been consistently in the Sweet 16 and further. Congratulations on retirement, Jim. But anyway, that's one of those schools. You also talk about Georgetown, who dominated the 80s. You talk about UConn. I knew UConn from the 90s growing up. I can't tell you if UConn won the Big East or not, but I can sure tell you that UConn won some national championships when I was a baby. So like that's the stuff I remember. So like I think March,
like you look at, I feel like this is wrong, but the Iowa State that has Sister Jean. So many people know
Loyola Chicago.
Loyola Chicago.
Yep.
I knew it was like the maroon and yellow color.
Yeah.
But they know that team because Sister Jean goes to the Sweet 16, or like
they made the Final Four. Like that team made the Final Four that season. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Is like people will also remember Virginia losing to UMBC as that 16 seed, and then winning the national championship the next year. So like that, those are things. March is so much more important in my head in building your program, building your status, everything like that. I don't think there's anything like one way or the other. Is it an accomplishment? Is it a trophy? Is it a good thing to have? 100%. It's more things that you can report to in the recruiting room. But I'm telling you, to me, the most important thing that you're going to say over and over again is that we made it this far in March last year. We want to go further.
Yeah.
And how, whatever that mark is, like we've been to 2 Elite Eights and a Sweet 16 is a lot more impressive than saying we've been to a Sweet 16. We lost in the round of, I believe they lost in the round of 64 last year. And then we made it to another Sweet 16. That's much better. Now you get to sprinkle that on top with the SEC tournaments and the SEC titles in the conference play. But March is college basketball, and that's the whole thing about it. And to me, that's the most important thing. So I think that's our slant on the debate. We're both Arkansas fans. We're gonna pick Eric Musselman probably 9 out of 10 times, but that's the logic I see behind it. I'm very curious why you may see it differently, but I think between fan bases got the reasoning right on why we have different perspectives on why one way and why the other. But to me, that's the answer to the debate. It's like, to me, it's Eric Musselman.
Yeah, I agree. I think you take notoriety, you take history, and you take longevity of your program.
And you brought up the NBA point that I didn't even consider. Like the NBA point is like, that's more eyes on your program. We just talked about Lamont Paris and Gigi Jackson, and how that's going to help build that program. It's going to help Alabama to be able to point to Brandon Miller, but Arkansas is also going to have, guys that they're going to point to that Eric Musselman coached, and several of them who are the NBA. So I think that's in truth that's what's going to happen. And, that's one of those points that I didn't even consider. So yeah, give me that. Calipari measures his success often also in the NBA draft. And this year, Arkansas is probably going to win the NBA draft over Alabama again. they're gonna have. We'll get our NBA draft coverage throughout the entire offseason here, and we'll be talking about that as we look at boards. But you got probably 3 guys who are going to go in the first round, and possibly one or two more who might go in the second, and several guys are going to make the G League.
Yeah. You mentioned Coach Cal and just that notoriety that Kentucky has for, being a one and done school, or just the amount of players that they have. I feel like people pop up all the time that I forget they even went to Kentucky, that are phenoms in the NBA. But, my mind goes to that one and done 30 for 30.
Yeah.
And he literally has a stage full of NBA players, NBA talent that came from him.
Yep. And who has the best record of March? John Calipari. Out of all the coaches in the SEC, he has the best winning percentage out of all of them. So that's an additional thing. And he's got a national championship. It doesn't hurt. So the guy took UMass to the Final Four. I know that. Like this is what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
I can't tell you if they won any conference titles in that, but I can tell you they've been to the Final Four under him. So, yeah, to me, 100 times it's always March. It's always March. To me, is the measuring stick. Like I said, you can finish 10th in the conference, and I think you've had just about almost as a successful season, because to me, those SEC titles are about that much. March is worth a heck of a lot more. So that's just my perspective. We're going to wrap this up. We had 2 commercial breaks to this show. We have no more SEC basketball to talk about, but we'll talk about our national championship next week on Monday night after the national championship. Hopefully that episode will be out Tuesday morning on your drive, and we'll be talking transfer portal and anything else that we possibly can get put together on this show to keep it SEC relevant. But I'm sure we'll get some hate from Alabama fans who listen this week, and I'm sure Christian is going to snip this out of the recording and stick us on full blast on Alabama, and we'll get all sorts of fun times with Christian Sykes. So I already said I was kind of biased on this, but that's just my opinion, too. So it is what it is.
Hey, I did say, stick them side by side, blind record. I'm still picking Muss.
Yep. I would circle the section in March and looking at the NBA talent, 100%. Yep. That makes complete sense to me. Anyway, all right. So, Maddie, anything you want to say to the people before we get out of here?
It's been fun. It's been a great ride on our first season. We can't wait for the next one. Hope you guys stick around to see what happens.
Yeah, next episode officially kicks off with the national championship recap, and then that's kind of the start of next year. Season 2 of this show. So it's kind of weird. Yeah. Season finale next week. Hey, make sure you check out VSN Collegiate. Follow it on Twitter. Follow the Variety Sports Network on Twitter, on YouTube, all that good stuff. Make sure that you follow all that really good content. We've also got college baseball podcast, all sorts of college football podcasts that you're going to be able to check out. I mentioned the We Hate Your Team, also a member of the Variety Sports Network. Really, really good shows out there. Go make sure that you follow them. They'll be retweeting basketball shows and good content out there all the time. Blah, 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 blah. A ton of good shows out there on Variety Sports Network. Go check them out. Go check out our sponsors. Go check out all this stuff. Please check out our sponsors. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Well, because we need followers and we need people to like the ads so I can get paid to sit here and talk about college basketball as much as I possibly can, because I love it. Agreed. And then next year we can go to vacation and hopefully film in some sports book as the entire room goes absolutely insane. And we'll be live on location in Viva Las Vegas again next season. That we weren't live this year, and what I was drinking pina coladas, but is what it is.
Is what it is.
And then I saw the hardest basketball game I probably ever watched in person in my life. So that was also a thing. That's how I imagine that UConn game is how a lot of smaller teams, when they come into Bud Walton, feel certain days. It's like,
I went and watched that with Chanley, and she has an almost 3-year-old, and at one point her husband Derek yelled at his son, "Quit messing with Maddie. She wants to watch the game." I said, "Honestly, I'm good. I'll play with him."
Yeah, I'll play with kids. I'll play with the kid. My buddy texted me with 7 minutes to go left in the second half. Like, can we get out of here? And I was like, we got a whole nother game on these tickets, right? Like, like Gonzaga and UCLA coming up next. Like, can we please leave? And I was like, fine. Apparently, I missed a heck of a Gonzaga UCLA game. So
Hey, I mean, you're in Vegas at that point.
yeah,
There's a lot to do. You're
there's
fine.
a lot to go do. All sorts of stuff to go do. And yeah, we were gonna go check out some other stuff. Oh, by the way, fun thing to do in Las Vegas, Area 15. Go check out the Omega Mart. It's by Meow Wolf. That's not a plug. They're not a sponsor, everybody. I'm legitimately suggesting this, especially if you're weird like me, if you like weird stuff. And I'm not talking about creepy, or nasty stuff like that. I'm talking about weird art, that kind of thing. And it's not like, art you hang on the wall. I'm talking about this is one of the weirdest sci-fi movies. It's like, that's the best way to describe this. This is like walking around in a sci-fi movie. That's the best way. And there's
We're supposed to go last year, but the time slot, the only time that we had to do it, they were sold out of tickets. So
it's so good.
it's on my list next time I go back.
Yeah, and we were watching videos of it when we got back home about the creators talking about it, and they were like, yeah, there's stuff that
and your heart makes no sound. I'll find valid in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. You're the night sky hiding behind dark gray clouds. I can't figure you out now. I see all blue. There is so much cold in you, and the silence is so loud when you go. I just stay dancing with my shadow all day. Watch the tide. I can't find the point where to pass the line, but you're the night sky. I'm trying to see your stars, but I've always feared the dark. Now I see brightly. I can feel your silence. You always feel so far when your stars are burnt out and your heart makes no sound. I'll find valid in your